I would like to start off in an odd place, which is really with a personal story as to why I wrote this book, We First, which Robin kindly mentioned launched this week, and which you all have in your bags today, so I really do hope you enjoy the book. But it is completely aligned with this theme of more from less, in the sense that I'm a long-time ad guy. I had the cool job working on Nike, I had a big job running a global account, and yet I was 41, 42, and I was completely unfulfilled. I don't know if any of you in this room has ever felt this, but you wonder, what are you doing on a daily basis? Is it going to be just more of the same? Is this it? And at the same time, my father passed away suddenly in the middle of the night, and I missed his farewell phone call. And that makes you very mindful of the purpose of your time here on the planet. And when you have children like I do coming through, you suddenly get more engaged as to what is the purpose of you being here? What's the contribution you're going to make? And then finally, I happened to read the transcript to the speech that Bill Gates gave at the World Economic Forum in 2008, where he said, government and philanthropy can't fix the world on their own. We need the private sector to get involved. His creative capitalism speech. So it was an odd collision between something I thought I understood, creativity, and capitalism, which I didn't necessarily understand equally well. So the whole purpose of this book, We First, was to try and make sense of what will brand storytelling look like in the future? What will relationship building between brands and consumers look like? So when we think about design today, I'd like you to think about design in terms of storytelling, design in terms of relationship building on behalf of a brand. And We First really is a counterpoint to the me first mentality that's got us in a lot of trouble in the last few years. Who here was not upset by 2008 when we found out everything that was going on? It was quite disheartening, right? To realize that we've either been misled or, there was misinformation out there that maybe our tax-paying dollars had been misappropriated and misapplied. And suddenly, as a consumer community, we've become a lot more distrustful. But nor are we exempt. I mean, we see a me-first mentality in the way companies seek profit for profit's sake, in the way we treat the planet and how we sort of are reluctant to accept sustainable practices, in the way that we as consumers over-consume as customers. We're all guilty to some extent. So I thought, what is the core problem here? And the problem really is looking at the world through the lens of me first. And if that's the case, how do we look at the world through the lens of we first? Because if 2008 taught us anything, it's that we now live in an intimately connected and mutually dependent global community. What we did on Wall Street affected Main Street, it affected your jobs, your homes, your healthcare, your hopes. What happened on Wall Street affected Iceland, Greece, the EU, and stock markets throughout the Middle East. And then there was the recession that followed. And yet a short 3 years later, we see many corporations and financial institutions returning to the same me-first habits and thinking, correct? With the bonuses and with the disproportion between the salary of a CEO and the average employee. So what are we going to do about that? Are we going to throw up our hands and take no responsibility? Or are we going to reframe the way we speak as brands and leverage social technology to construct the change that we want to see in the world? For that to happen, for us to execute a we first vision, we need to come to terms with a second presumption. The first being that we now live in a mutually dependent global community. The second is, prosperity is not the wealth of a few, but the well-being of many. Think about that. We have 40 million Americans below the government-set poverty line right now. We have over 40 million Americans living principally off food stamps. In the context of emerging markets around the world growing more quickly, in the context of climate change, child mortality, preventable diseases, lack of access to clean water and food. Martin Luther King, in August of 1963, characterized the plight of the African American community as an island of poverty in the midst of an ocean of material prosperity. And that metaphor is still true, but only in reverse. We are now an ever-shrinking island of extraordinary wealth, fortifying itself against a widening ocean of abject poverty. And that is not just unconscionable in some terms, it's also bad business, because brands cannot survive in societies that fail. They cannot survive in a world in which the middle class continues to disappear, which is their customer base. So the purpose of We First as a book was to stand back and go, in the context of all this social technology out there, could we use its ability to connect people in real time, virtually anywhere in the world, to scale social change, so that we don't necessarily demonize capitalism or corporations or consumers, but we just better share prosperity through the engine of capitalism. So with that in mind, I want to share 3 themes from the book, and I'm just going to touch on them very quickly, and I would like them to provoke you a little bit in terms of how you think your brand should relate to its audience, how you should build your relationship with your customer community. So the first one is a new partnership between brands and consumers. As I mentioned in the comment earlier, each of us is now a content and media company. I'm sure some of you are tweeting out as we speak. We can all produce, distribute, and curate content. And so we're now in dialogue in real time with brands. So this new dialogue has shifted the power to consumers, who are at the same time becoming more sophisticated in their use of these tools and more aware of the trouble we're in as a function of all the information available on the internet, more capable of sharing that awareness through social media, and at the same time more aware that government is riddled with historic debt. Non-profits can't do it on their own, in which case we're all looking to our brands to play a greater role in social responsibility. Would you agree? Do you all look to your brands now to take more responsibility for their impact on the planet? Absolutely. In which case, if we use social media to celebrate those brands that are doing good and to admonish those brands that are being socially irresponsible, we have the possibility of creating a new partnership between brands and consumers, connected by social technology and aligned around shared values, that can become a third pillar of social change in addition to government and philanthropy.